Good morning. We are really very happy that NOAH is in Berlin. What we want to do is to strengthen the digital competition in Europe and to make Berlin a true hub of digital innovation and entrepreneurial success. We are doing that in a historical transformation of our economy and our society into a digital economy. There's a lot of change, a lot of disruption. Nobody really knows what exactly it is going to do with us. A lot of people are worried, have fears, try to defend against progress, are complaining. That reminds me a little bit of the story of a young man who is entering a Buddhist monastery because he wants to learn from the most famous guru. And upon his arrival, he has a conversation with the guru, and the guru says, "You see, here in this monastery, you can basically do what you want. There's only one rule. You may only speak 2 words every 10 years. So the guy stays in the monastery for 10 years, and then he says, "Hard bets." Okay. Another 10 years later, he sees the guru again and says, "Bad food." So another 10 years later, he sees the guru in total desperation and says, "I quit." The guru says, "That's good news, because over the last 30 years, the only thing you were able to do is complaining." So this is clearly not the role model for digital transformation. What we want to do here, we want to bring together industry leaders from the so-called old economy and from the new economy, from the analog world and from the digital world. We want to bring together the best people. We want to learn from each other. We want to improve. And again, we want to shape the digital future. Peter Drucker has said this famous sentence, "The best way to predict the future is to shape it." So that's what we can do, and that's what we have to do. We all know the famous stories of old business models that were disrupted by new models. Sometimes we have these days the impression that disruption is an invention of the digital economy. That's definitely not the case. Businesses have always been disrupted. Schumpeter called it the creative destruction. That's what it was always about. If somebody has a great idea for a service or for a product, it is about destroying existing services, existing products. It's about destroying existing habits. It's about creating new consumer needs, new consumer desires, new consumer habits. So that's nothing new. It's just that in the digital era, everything is accelerating. It's going faster, and that's the rule of the network economy, that the winner takes it all, and the winner takes it even faster than in former times. That's why it took quite a while for many industries, for many old industries, to realize that what's happening out there is really meaningful for what they are doing. And meanwhile, the car industry has learned that if they are not changing their mindset, in a couple of years from now, they may be able to produce the aluminium in order to perhaps create a nice design for a car, but the rest of the product and the real business with the product will be done by other people. It took some time until banks understood that the digitization is also affecting their business, not only because of new currencies, but also because the knowledge about the customer and the data about the customer, that is the decisive competitive advantage, and that's what a tech giant may do better in a couple of years from now than a traditional bank. And also the insurance industry learned what is actually our real proposal in the future if they are technology experts owning the world treasury of data and knowing a lot more precisely how often and at which speed somebody is driving its car, know much better about the heart rate and the blood pressure and the health habits and workout habits of a potential insurance client. With that, they are able to shape much more individual insurance contracts and maybe simply the better insurance company than a traditional player. So basically, in the entire traditional industry, the big new learning is, oh, this thing is going to affect us. This thing can disrupt our business. Standing here as a CEO of a media company, I'm simply representing an industry that has been very early exposed. But that's not something that we have as a kind of exclusive. The music industry and the publishing industry were probably the two that learned first how radical, how fundamental that change can be, how disruptive it can be, but also what great opportunities are in that change. And I think that is perhaps the most important message. If you want to shape the future, you have to embrace it, you have to take advantage of it, and you may definitely not try to fight it. And that is something that basically the media industry had to learn pretty fast. At the beginning, a lot of publishers around the world thought, you see, this kind of internet journalism is a nice marketing tool for our traditional paper product, for our analog product, but it's not really going to replace it. Year by year, the publishers learn around the world it's very likely that digital distribution channels are going to replace analog paper as we know it. And then we have a very similar question than the manufacturers of coaches. When the automobile was developed, some of them thought, okay, we have to defend transportation done by horses. And we have to be against this new technology because it's going to disrupt us. Others said, okay, we are not in the business of producing coaches. We are in the business of organizing the best and most comfortable transport of people. So if that's your business, you have a bright future. The same is true for publishers. Is our business to print news and entertainment on paper? Then I think it's only a question of how long it's going to take until we are dead. If our business is to provide the best possible independent journalism, the best and most critical investigation, the best and most funny entertainment, the best and most trustful information and entertainment from a responsible source, from a responsible brand that takes responsibility if an information is wrong or has to be corrected, then I think, if that is our definition of our business, I think we have a very bright future. It's only a question of time until analog paper as we know it is going to be replaced by electronic paper. I think what we have today, a tablet as we know it, or a mobile phone as we know it, is just a very early stage of development. It reminds me a little bit of Wall Street 2, this film, when Michael Douglas is leaving the prison at the very beginning, and the director of the prison is handing him over all his belongings that he left when he went into prison 10 years ago. And so suddenly there is a pretty big box on the table, and Michael Douglas looks a little, what is that? And then he realized, oh, that was my mobile phone when I entered the prison. So perhaps the new reading devices in 5 or 10 years from now will look so different from what we have today than the mobile phone today differs from Michael Douglas' mobile phone when he entered prison. I think that in a couple of years from now, electronic paper will look very much like that, like a piece of paper as we know it. It's going to be very flat and thin and super light. It's going to be flexible. You can roll it, you can fold it, you can put it in your pocket. Everybody has it. It's cheap. We have seen it. The prototypes are existing. It's only a question of time, how long it takes until they are really mass market products, commodities. And then if everybody has this kind of electronic paper, electronic, super flexible and light reading device, where you can do emails, where you can watch photos from your holidays, where you can watch a movie or whatsoever, then this is definitely the newspaper or the magazine of the digital era. So the idea is not to preserve newspapers as we know it. The idea is to emancipate the idea of a newspaper from paper and to successfully transform it into a digital paper, into digital journalism, into desirable digital content brands. And I don't see any reason why digital journalism should be more superficial or, I don't know, not as intelligent as analog journalism. But I see many reasons why it has the potential to be substantially better. You have unlimited space. If you want to say something on 800 lines, do so. The only reason to shorten a text is because it's better short than long. You have total flexibility with regard to speed. You can send a news immediately, a couple of seconds after it happened, but you can also take the liberty to wait 6 hours to reflect and then have a thought or have an inside information that nobody else has, and that creates a real competitive advantage. And then also digital journalism has the potential to be a lot smarter because you have immediate access to the knowledge, to the wisdom of your readers. You can immediately correct a mistake, or if you're writing a text about, I don't know, car manufacturing in China, and there is an expert on Chinese car manufacturing and has an interesting aspect to add, it will be added. So it has absolutely the potential to be smarter and more thought through and more profound. And then, of course, from a pure creative and aesthetic point of view, digital journalism is a lot more richer. You have access to all kinds of media products, to radio content, TV content, short video content, written content, and you can combine it in very new forms of layout and aesthetics and interactive features. And that is the last and another very important reason why digital journalism can be better, because it is interactive. It can immediately react on readers' wishes and readers' interests, which does not necessarily mean that you always have to follow what the reader wants. In order to keep a certain charisma, sometimes you, the brand, the authority of the team that is creating, curating that content, may simply say, we think this is relevant, we are interested in doing that, in providing that information, and then the reader can react. Yeah, the idea that the reader only wants to read what she or he is interested in is just a part of the truth. It reminds me a little bit of the anti-authoritarian kindergartens of the 60s, where a kid asks the kindergartner, do we have to play today again what we want to play? You see, kids don't always want to play what they want to play. They sometimes want to do something that other people want them to do in order to broaden the horizon. So I see basically only advantages. The crucial question is, how do we successfully monetize? And here, I'm a lot more optimistic than I used to be. Content businesses in the digital world 3 years ago were pretty unattractive. Today, I think during the last 2 years, that has changed profoundly. A lot of very interesting digital startups developed in a very short period of time into serious digital media companies. Vox Media was raising capital at a valuation of 375 million or 400 million even. BuzzFeed raised money at $850 million US valuation. Vice was valued $2.5 billion US. A lot of interesting, smart, return-oriented investors are believing that the content business is super attractive. That's why Marc Andreessen invested $50 million in BuzzFeed, among other professional investors. So the whole perception, not only in the Silicon Valley, but worldwide, has changed with regard to the value creation potential of digital content. And I think we are at the moment at the beginning of a founding era of new digital media companies. I'm pretty sure they're one of the big four, which is at the moment probably Vice, BuzzFeed, Vox, and Huffington Post, or perhaps on the second layer, one of the smaller, aggressive, disrupting content startups is going to be, in 5 or 10 years, the Disney, the Time Warner, the Viacom of the digital era. New media companies are created. And I think that's super exciting. That is a tremendous opportunity. And that's why I am absolutely optimistic that the strategy that Axel Springer has implemented a couple of years ago to radically transform into a digital company. Today, we have 63% of our revenues coming from digital businesses, 81% of our advertising revenues are coming from digital businesses, and 73% of our EBITDA is today already digital, but that's only a starting point. The race has not really been started. We are at the pole position, but now we really have to make sure that we are one of the winners in that race. And we have a strategy that is based on the beliefs, no fear of self-cannibalization, because you're going to be cannibalized anyway, so it's much better to cannibalize yourself. Take the example of classified ad business. Classified ads have always been very relevant for a publisher. We had 6%, only 6% of our total revenues coming from classifieds in the analog world. Today, after this very, very aggressive investment strategy into digital classifieds, they contribute to roughly 50% of the group's EBITDA today. We have a lot more to win than to lose with this digitization in classifieds. The second rule is no silos, because we strongly believe that if you build a company in silos, and you have here an analog silo and here a digital silo, you create losers and winners. At the beginning, you have more losers. They are fighting strong against the winners. The outcome is clear. So we have brought it together into one hierarchy, into one multimedia responsibility, so everybody in the company can be part of that winning story and can really transform its business. And the third belief is that you should always stick to your core competencies. The more is changing around you, the more radical you have to transform, the more you have to stick to the things that you really know well, and that is, in our case, to create the best possible content, to monetize it through subscription to the reader, to monetize it through reach-driven advertising and performance-based advertising to the commercial clients, to the big companies, advertising clients, and thirdly, to monetize it through classified advertising. This has been our strategy for more than 10 years now. As I said, we are in a pole position. We are very motivated to enter a completely new dimension of our company in the digital age through an aggressive rollout, through an aggressive internationalization, particularly into the English-speaking world of our business. And with that, I'm truly convinced that the brightest times of our business, of publishing around the world, but also of Axel Springer, are still ahead of us. With that, I wish you a very successful NOAH conference here in Berlin, and I'm looking forward to have some conversations with you today, and of course, then to see you next year again. Thank you very much.